Higdon Outdoors, duck hunting. Here we go. It is going. Okay, cool. This is episode 3 of the Public Land Advocate Podcast, and it is the first episode of Deer Camp Stories taking place out here in Pratt, Kansas. Out on public land for Kansas deer season. And this episode, decided to film it, shoot it, record it in the same place that my dad and I started deer hunting out here,
12 years ago?
Not more. No, more than that. 14, 15 years ago. So I'm joined by...
Time flies.
It does. So joined by my father, Steve, our friend Steve, and our other friend, Chris McGill. All you guys met at Cargill, working for Cargill.
We worked together at Cargill a number of years ago.
Another company that's big into supporting public land and agricultural development with respect to the land. So it's interesting how public land has brought all of us together for the second year in a row now for master storytellers of, hunting stories that never seem to not be interesting. And that's kind of what one of the things I love to think about with public land is how it brings people together and the stories that you get to tell. And the memories that you make that last a lifetime, and that's why I wanted you guys to be on this episode, is just to be a part of that and share stories that we've told each other probably dozens, if not more, of different mistakes, different successes, falling down in front of each other, boots that are wet, and I don't know. It's been a fun 4 days.
Yeah, it really has.
Wet.
A lot of miles, huh?
Wet, so. Oh. It's fun though.
So the interesting thing about hunting out here is just the vast amount of territory there is, and the opportunities. Along with the opportunities comes the frustration when you're in one spot and you're deer or any other spot or whatnot. So while it seems easy, it's not.
No.
But so many things can go right and so many things can go wrong. You just never know. The situation you, Steve, and John had earlier, it was a couple days ago now, where it was obvious John had pushed deer to you, and all he was waiting for was the bang, and you didn't even get a glimpse of it.
I'm sitting kind of tucked on the south side of this hill, looking over a watering hole, pretty out on the kind of the east side of this public land property that we're out here. And I was glassing, and I can see John coming across this draw, and I'm watching him, and I'm looking at the water. Then all of a sudden I hear this chattering going on. I have no idea what it is, and I bring the binoculars back up, and John is just all agitated, arms are going everywhere this way. I'm looking around, and I don't see anything. I don't know what he's doing. So I'm like, all right, maybe he wants to talk to me. I come down there, and he's like, why didn't you shoot those does? What does? So there's probably about a draw that they came through, and I think I probably had about a 6-foot window where I would have been able to see him come through there. And apparently they came through, but I was looking at him because he's trying to get my attention to shoot these does that he's pushing, and it was probably a second that they were there. I had no idea. They didn't come back. That was it for that morning.
It's amazing for having so much. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Just speak up a little bit.
It's amazing how, for having so much open area, those deer find a way to disappear. It reminds me of another situation. John and I were hunting on this land in very early in John's deer hunting career, and we had been jumping brushy areas, and hadn't had any success. Just happened to be standing on the hill glassing, and I see in this small brush patch, a couple 300 yards away, I pick up a deer's antlers, pick up the movement, and so I looked, and sure enough, there's a very, very nice buck, and there's a doe right alongside it in the middle of this brush patch. So from where we were standing, it was very open in the front and relatively open in the back, and a hill off to our right. So I told John, I said, just skirt around the backside of that hill and move out in that direction. Well, John used to have a tendency to look at his feet when he walked.
I knew the manufacturer of my boots really well.
So he heads off, generally in the right direction, but he's looking at his feet and he's starting to veer closer and closer and closer to this brush lot, right, or brushy patch. And the idea was to get behind the deer and push the deer toward me. But John basically walked almost up to the brush patch itself, head down. This buck and this doe decided, I had enough of this guy, right? So they just busted out the side and went away, went straight away. And John never even saw him.
No. But that same day, we hit a brush patch coming back after we had an encounter with somebody that we had dubbed Mr. Number One. And this gentleman was carrying the nicest Ruger number 1 I've ever seen. And I think I was 14 when this happened. I was so infatuated with one of those guns. So Ruger, if this ever gets big, I'll send you my address for one of those. Like, I'd never seen a nicer firearm in my life. I'm strapped to the back of a more asinine person. And he had stopped to talk to us to finish out this story, and I don't remember what he said. All I remember thinking at that age is, I don't want to be that guy when I grow up. So he walked through the brush patch that we had come up to. My dad said, I'm going to swing around the other side of this brush patch and push it to you. And this guy had gotten maybe 150 yards away when you started this. And there was a big 8-point in there, and all I heard, whoomp! And I knew, like, there's no echo to the shot. I was like, that's it. That's a down. Like, I knew who shot. And that guy turned around, and you stood up, got up a little bit in the brush patch, and waved me over. And the look on that guy's face, priceless, after the way that he had talked to us. I'll never forget that as long as I live. He just put his head down. I guess he's wandered out into nowhere because we never saw him come back. He could still be on that hill for all we know.
You know, I think we probably can all come up with stories with the guys that have the fanciest gear, the nicest guns, the most expensive things. And it reminds me when I was in college, I went back to North Dakota to my buddy's place, and he had a friend of his family's. This guy was probably about 10 years older than us. They wanted him to go out pheasant hunting, so he'd come up. He's pretty well. He's an entrepreneur down in Texas, and we're out in just some public land up in North Dakota hunting pheasants. And like I said, college kid, so I got an 870 Magnum Express. My buddy's got about the same gun. This guy has just beautiful Kohler shotgun, and I had no idea what it was, but he was very happy to tell me exactly what this was and how much this was worth and how awesome this gun is. And that afternoon when we got back and it was 8 pheasants between me and Eric and 0 on that Kohler, we kind of let him know what we thought about that gun.
Sometimes
Does that thing work?
It's cool to be able to hunt with your kids. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
But, and I think Steve was around for this one. So my second oldest, Cade, was down with us. We were hunting, and we were just out in the morning, up in a tree stand, by a feeder and whatnot, and it's still too dark, it's before you can shoot anything, but man, I hear it coming up, right? And there's been an 8-pointer that, has been on the trail cam and all that stuff. So hear him coming out of the gulch, hear him get up close, all that, and then every bit of noise stops. And so we just sit there still for a half hour, and it gets light, and there's nothing. And I'm looking everywhere, and I see nothing. And and finally, it's an hour and a half later or something like that. So we get out of the tree stand and go back and hook up with Steve and another guy that was there hunting with us. We're like, man, I don't know how he snuck away, but that's the sneakiest deer I've ever heard, right? But he was down in that gulch, so gonna stick Cade back up in that tree stand, and we're gonna push him. We're gonna push him out of that gulch. He'll come right to you, right? So we're stomping feet through that gulch, right? I can see Cade in the stand, right? And I'm like, where the hell did this deer go? And we walk up there. It's laying on the ground about 35 feet from the feeder. That is a doornail, not a mark on it. That 8-point buck. Just freaking laying there.
This is a sacrificial goat.
Yeah. So he had walked up there and just.
He said, "This is it. I'm done." That was the easiest tag out I've ever heard of. You didn't even have to waste any money on a bullet or an arrow.
No,
It wasn't.
he wasn't a mess. It was healthy. He was, you know what I mean? All that other stuff, just freaking walked up there and died.
I take my youngest daughter turkey hunt with me quite a few times, and one of the first times we went out, we were in kind of central Kansas, and we went out with shotguns, set the decoys up in front of us, and we could see some turkeys about maybe about 100 yards, 150 yards out. That was probably farther than that, probably 200 yards out. And they were just not responding to calls. They would just move back and forth. They wouldn't come any closer, they wouldn't get any further away. And so Lizzie, she's just kind of like not having this anymore, and she's just asking questions a mile a minute. And the first question she asked me, she goes, "Dad, why do we put these decoys out there? What's the purpose for these? Why do you have all these girl turkeys out there?" And I'm like, well, how do I have a birds and bees conversation without really getting into this? I'm like, well,
The turkey example.
see, we got these girl turkeys out there, and we're trying to call the boy turkeys over so they can ask the girl turkeys out for a date. And she ponders it for a minute. She looks at me. She goes, "Dad, we're gonna give those turkeys a date with death." I'm like, "That's my girl. All right." So like another 45 minutes goes by, and she's like, "Dad, why don't we just sneak them?" I'm like, "Because you don't sneak turkeys in an open field. It just doesn't happen, Lizzie." And she's like, she's smarter than I am, obviously, because she looks over. She goes, "Well, what about that fence row? It's full of grass. Let's just crawl through that." I'm like, "That'll never work." Like another half hour goes by. All right, let's do it. What are we gonna lose? So get over, and she'd been out bow hunting with me before, so this is the first time that she was shotgun hunting. And I was trying to make sure that she understood the safety, understood this, and we got no shells in the gun. I'm like, all right, we're gonna go. So we crawl over, we get in this fence row, and the grass is probably 4 foot tall. I'm like, this is good cover. So we crawl and we crawl and we crawl, and I kind of poke my head up, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna work. We're 30 yards from these things. This is gonna be good. So I'm whispering to her, I'm like, all right, let's put the shells in. And just remember, we gotta turn the safety off, and you're gonna squeeze, and as soon as you shoot, I'm gonna follow up right after you. And so you take the first shot. And she kind of eases herself up, and I can see she's got the gun trained on the Jake or the Tom that's closest to us. And I hear this little grunting coming from her, and I'm like, "Lizzie, shoot. Shoot, Lizzie." She's like, "I can't, the trigger won't pull." And I remember it's a single shot. You gotta cock the hammer back.
Oh.
By that time, the birds get away. And then I'm like, "Lizzie, I'm sorry, I should have told you this. I got an earful for an hour and a half about how I messed up her turkey hunt. We could have had these turkeys on the table." We get home, what's the first thing she tells my wife? "Dad screwed up the hunt."
Oh yeah, always, right? Always.
It makes me think of that time we were going hunting. And this story, I think you have suffered more through this one than I did. And you sent me into the gas station with a $5 bill, and you're like, "Get coffee and something to eat." And so
Yeah, we were coming up here, I think.
yeah, and I think we were pheasant hunting this time.
Yeah.
And I was young. We had just moved to Kansas. I think I was 12, maybe younger than that. And it's everything I could do to carry these 2 large coffees and 2 donuts or whatever. Because you have $5, you can get a $5 go to a gas station. You go to get every penny out of the $5 bill you can. And so I stopped by the car, and I'm trying to figure out how to get in, and you're pumping gas. And I know from where you are, all you heard was when the coffee cups hit the ground. You come over and what was that? And I said, that one's yours.
I dropped your coffee. You know it was mine. Yeah, that was yours.
To his benefit, I think I took 2 sips of mine and gave him the rest. I hadn't acquired a taste for coffee yet.
You did feel a little guilty, I'm sure.
That is the best way to learn math, though, is going in with $5 and how do I get this to come out to the effing penny?
Yep. You know, John, of course, is a big, and we all are, but John spearheads the advocacy for public hunting. And so I'll tell this story. And it was here, and I was hunting by myself. I had the day off from work, or took the day off from work. John was in school. You guys, as I learned later, were otherwise engaged. So I managed to harvest a very nice deer that I thought was a lot nicer until I got up close to it, because it had a massive rack on one side and no horns on the other. But anyway, and I was deep into this property, and the deer was big. It was big deer. So I
love this.
I built out of a golf cart bag hauler, the old 2-wheel.
You called me first, I think.
No, it was after.
Okay, I was in Texas
But yeah,
for work.
I did call you because I was getting very frustrated. Anyway, so I created this buck buggy
Out of a golf
out
cart
of
bag
a golf
carrier.
cart bag carrier. Right? So I get this deer dressed up and I put it on this thing, and I get about 2 steps and it just literally collapses into just a massive aluminum junk. So now I got this massive junk and I got this big deer. And so nothing else to do. I start calling people because I'm never going to get this deer out by myself. So, yeah, I think, Steve, you were the first guy I called. And yeah, I'd love to come and help you, but.
I was in Panhandle, Texas. I was on my way home, and I was like, I can be there in 7 hours if you can wait. I'm right there. I'm on my way.
Keep the coyotes away.
And I don't think too many other people answered the phone, but I didn't get anybody to help me, so I got to the task. And so it was carry the gun in garbage forward, go back, get the deer, drag the deer as far as I could till I was wheezing. And this went on for 5 hours. And I was up on that road we walked out on yesterday.
Okay.
And by then, and 300 yards, maybe 500 yards from the truck. I could see it.
That tree.
Yeah, I could see the vehicle, and these
You're like, dang.
2 fellas.
God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a wee bit of hope out there.
These 2 fellas come over the hill, from where you were sitting in Glasson last year.
Okay, yeah.
And so they come down. Hey, how's it going? Blah blah blah. All the night. Oh, that's a nice deer. We saw that deer earlier. Oh, You know, I'm thinking to myself, why didn't you shoot it? But anyway, so they chit-chatted. And so, all right, I had enough small talk. I kind of dropped the hint. Well, I got to get this deer to the car. These 2 guys are like, okay. And off they go. And I'm like, really? So my advice is, when you're hunting public land and you run into somebody who needs a hand, give them a hand. Drag the deer out with him, help him, carry the cart, junk. It was junk, it wasn't a cart anymore. Or whatever, just, be courteous and be kind and help people out when they need it. And believe me, anybody that's dragging a deer needs help.
That's right.
There you
I will greatly appreciate it.
There's no way to feel more out of shape. No matter how much you try to work to get in shape for deer season, than the first time you gotta drag anything. It could be the smallest deer or a slammer buck like you shot through CRP out here in western Kansas.
You learn the definition of dead weight.
It will put you to the absolute most physical test possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should do that buddy system too. So when we were in college, went to school in Rapid City, South Dakota, and a bunch of my friends were really big into four-wheeling, and we were out one day, and it was getting close to dark, and we were coming back on this logging trail to get back to Rapid City, and we came across a guy out there in Blaze Orange, because it is public land out there, state land, and we pulled over to see, hey, are you okay? Because he didn't look right, and he'd been lost for about the last 8 hours. Just got turned around in the mountains, had no idea where he was. Where he was walking is not where he said he parked. So, we picked him up, cranked the heater up inside there, and it probably took us about an hour to get back to where his vehicle was, getting down the highway and driving around, going in complete opposite direction, sun's going down. Make sure you're out there. There's so much public land in this country. There's some big areas like we can attest to out here. Just make sure people know where you are and you got some support that you can get.
Yeah, that's important. It really is.
And I think anybody who goes out to public land, have an SOS system on your phone, on your watch, just in case. I run a Garmin watch that I just have to hold my GPS button to have an SOS go out, and it goes out to 4 people, and they say it's accurate GPS coordinates to within 10 feet of where I am. And that's important to me because soon I'm going to have a hip surgery. So this season has been fun. It's the extra weight of that thought, but nothing beats going out to public land with your friends, even if you got a limp or go slow, or sometimes call the day early because you just can't deal with it anymore. And I'm glad I wasn't the only one that felt that today, because the weatherman might not have said it was raining and it was just foggy. I've never gotten that wet and fog before.
And not just for you. We had a situation, Steve and I with some other friends, were pheasant hunting, and Scott's dog.
Yeah.
Somebody, wasn't me, somebody shot a bird and it went down on skim ice on this pond.
Right? It's cold.
And the dog went after, and it was bitter cold day. And the dog went after the pheasant, as it was supposed to do. I'm sorry?
I think Legend was that dog's name.
Yeah. And so the dog, of course, breaks through the ice, grabs the bird, and it's trying to get back, and trying to get back, and trying to get back, and it's struggling to break through the ice. And eventually, had to go in and get the dog, got the dog out, the dog collapsed just from hypothermia, just flat out frozen. So we were rubbing the dog, stripped off our clothes, wrapped the dog up in our clothes, and
yeah, I had to run about a mile to the truck.
yeah.
Get that. Sorry about the land, but we went cross country to get up there.
Yeah, and so in this particular case, if you're somewhere, find out if there's a vet local or a vet somewhere that you can contact. Now in this particular case, guys were familiar with the area, but if you're not, it's really important if you're traveling with a dog that you have that also in your emergency kit. A number or a vet you can call or contact in the area in case something should happen. In this particular case, and the dog was older, as I recall.
Yeah, he's probably about 5 when that happened, I think.
And-
But good thing is, survived,
Yeah,
made
yeah.
a good recovery.
Made it, yeah, a great. He was home that evening and eaten by the next day.
Probably looks at a frozen pond differently.
Whew.
I would. Because I have fallen a lot in the marsh. I love to duck hunt. I have fallen a lot. And my dad can attest to the fact when I was younger, I had baby giraffe legs out in the duck marsh. And I fell probably every time we went out for like 3 seasons.
I've gone through the ice when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Brother and sister dragging me out. You know, it's.
Yeah, we can laugh about it now, but at the time it's not so funny.
You took a trip, didn't you? I heard about this story. You took a trip in the duck marsh once. And the only time I've ever heard about you falling, I wasn't there to see it.
Yeah.
I was actually around, I think.
We were. So every fall we would go up to North Dakota for opening pheasant season, and my parents, it was just like a
Much
good little
love, North
spot.
Dakota.
My parents would head down here to Kansas, and they'd see my new kid, and my wife would be like, "Yeah, go take your buddies up to North Dakota, go hunting." So Steve would go, Chris would go, and then I think Jeff and his son and Randy, a couple of us, we'd make some big trips up there, fill up my whole parents' house. My buddies from back home, they would have a bunch of other guys from Cargill that would show up, and we'd probably have 10, 12 guys that we'd go out and we'd do some goose hunting, duck hunting, pheasant hunting.
That was
We'd
cool.
go fishing, whatever we could do. You know, everything was in season, plenty of land up there, and just go have a good time. And we weren't on public land, we were at my buddy's ranch, and there's a lot of water in that area. And so I told these guys, I'm like, I got a good spot for you guys, duck hunt. We're gonna have a lot of fun. And huge body of water that their ranch kind of sits on that is a floodplain. When I graduated high school, it was dry. Now it's got 40 feet of water. And it's probably about an 8-9 mile lake, full of walleye, full of perch. It's fantastic, and it holds a lot of waterfall. I mean, it is a really big producer. And we were on a little land bridge, and I remember telling them, we don't even sit in water. We just sit on this, just right here in the middle of this land bridge,
Yep.
and they're just gonna fly, 10, 15 feet above our head. Like, I've been doing this for years, guys. Just have fun. So we're doing that, and just ducks left and right, having a blast with this. And Steve's like, well, we're gonna set some decoys up in this other pond. So he's got his waders on, and he's out there, and he's putting some decoys. And I remember I'm like, hey, there's a fence. Steve's gone. There's an old fence underwater, and he must have hit that. Down he goes, fills the waders up, he pops back up like the Swamp Thing, and just and lucky it's not very cold outside. I mean, most pheasant seasons we were up there is in the 70s, sometimes in the 80s. The weather's nice, so he strips down to his underwear, and we're like, let's go back to town. And small town where everyone knows everyone, and if your vehicle isn't from there all the time, people are always looking to see who's there.
Yeah.
Especially when it pulls up to a house and they've never seen it before. So we all pull up to the driveway of my parents' house, and of course everyone's looking out their windows, all the other grandmas, but in this case the town auctioneer comes out and he's like, hey! Steve hops out of the back seat, just in his whitey tighties. Hi!
That was a you ain't from around here moment.
Well, I mean, this is such a small town. I think there's maybe 600-700 people that live there, counting the cemetery probably. The first time, my wife's from Milwaukee, and the first time we went there, it was in the summer, and like I said, the guy across the street, he's the auctioneer, and he runs a whole bunch of other businesses, he's just an entrepreneur, and he had one of his outhouses, the porta potties that he'd take around for the auction places, and it was cleaned out already, but he was hosing it off in the street out in front of his house. My wife is just looking at this, she's like, Steve, he's washing a porta potty on the street. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to small town North Dakota, you know.
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think the moral of some of these funny stories is go outside.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
outside. Have fun. We tell the stories about people who've been lost, right? It ain't just hunters that get lost, right? You read David Paulides' Missing 411. People get lost all the time. It's not on public land, and they call it the pandemic of people getting lost, right? That if it was a trackable number of people who have lost or disappeared on public land, or made mistakes like we get to laugh about now, never show back up. Right? You look at that, the guy who survived 127 hours, didn't tell anybody where he was going, had to cut his own arm off. So go out with a plan. Whatever you're doing, just go outside. And you can have memories like this that you can laugh about.
Well, and it's not even about you don't even have to go out hunting, you don't have to go out fishing. I mean, just getting outside and exposing yourself to the outdoors. I mean, just sit down where no one else is around. Get quiet. Let the native wildlife settle back in and get used to you and see how nature, how wonderful, how beautiful, how amazing it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I don't need to catch a fish to be happy fishing, right? Because then I'd be out catching. I'm happy fishing. I'm happy hunting. I don't have to harvest because then I'd call it harvesting. You know, it's just the ability to be outside and then share what your experience was with people that you care about who understand.
Yeah. And you don't have to come out as far as we have right now at Deer Camp Year 2. You can go to your local city park and do a lot of this. And
Yep.
that's what, I talk to people about public land. They're, oh, it's so far away. No, go to your city park. Don't feed the ducks bread. It's bad for them. We've learned that. Don't feed the geese bread. Don't get attacked by the geese.
Or Alka-Seltzer. Just don't do that.
Be nice to the wildlife. Enjoy it. And one of the things that we worry about with public land, and I know all of y'all can attest to this, is that sometimes it goes away. And one of the first places we can see this is city parks that get run down and then sold off to developers for housing units. I know Wichita's had that happen. I grew up playing baseball, and some of the baseball diamonds aren't there anymore. People's backyard now. And that's where it starts. It's not the land that disappears out where nobody sees it. That's what comes last, because that's when they've learned they can get rid of it. And by they, I mean politicians. And that's why I tell everybody who listens to this, have fun listening to our stories in this episode, but hold the people we elect accountable for public land.
Amen, brother.
It's not a right or a left or a center issue. Everybody across the political spectrum can be out there. And I've been out in the duck marsh and run across solo hunters, men, women, all sorts of hair colors, from blue to green to white to gray to black, and the same spectrum of human beings out there. And that's the beauty of this. We all get to go outside and do this.
Are you excluding us that don't have hair anymore?
You
I
got
feel a little left out right
You
now.
got something on your face.
That's scraggly.
I think we should.
That's not true Norwegian work right there.
That's why you wear a hat, so it doesn't shine off.
I'd be scaring them all away. Maybe that was my problem. I took my damn hat off.
But use the public land, enjoy the public land, be stewards of the public land.
Yeah.
It's important. Not everybody understands how to treat public land, or any land for that matter. So you see the trash, I know it's not yours, you can still pick it up.
Yes.
If you see something wrong, it's probably important to report it. There are many options for that. Including anonymous options if you think there are people criminally abusing public land, and take care of it yourself. If you carry it in, carry it out, everybody knows the litany.
It's a blessing for us, and it needs to continue to be a blessing for everyone that comes after us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like I say in the previous 2 episodes, we're all public land trustees. I hate the phrase public land owner because some people do treat this stuff like they own it. We're all invested. You've paid taxes, whether it's sales tax, income tax, property tax, that bought a fishing or hunting license, bought a tent, right?
Yeah.
That all the money from that stuff gets directed in multiple places, and one of that is public land. We're a trust of owners of public land, but no one person truthfully owns it. We're all a trustee, and I think that's important. You know, I go out where I duck hunt in several places, and I always make the joke when I get home to my partner. I tell her, I picked up more shotgun shells than I shot. And I got a hip that doesn't work right now, so if I can bend over and pick them up, there's no excuse. Also, for $3.99 at Harbor Freight, they make an extendable magnet that picks up shotgun and rifle shells. And you better believe I carry one of those in the shell holder in my waders. Until I accidentally shot it off, whipping it out like an extendable whip. Went chink, and it went whee way out into the water, and I went,
You didn't dive in after it?
No, I didn't. But I figure that metal's gonna go back to Earth a lot faster than the plastic from a shotgun hull.
No.
Absolutely.
And the reason I say this stuff is because everywhere we hunt, all of us that are here today, I've seen pictures of people going out not hunting and enjoying that property. And guess what happens when they see a mess? It's always the people that they target, and I know some of you might listen to this and say, oh, hunters are persecuted. No, we're not.
We're our own worst enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're our own worst
We have
enemy.
met the enemy, and he is us.
There's 4 of them in this Airbnb. I feel like that Spider-Man meme where we're always pointing fingers at each other. You're the problem. No, you're the problem. But yeah, like it's all of us have to do this. And we had an incident while we were out here. We won't talk about it super at length, where we did have to report something.
Yeah, and
You can't do it anonymously.
Yep, and the people who are the enforcers of the regulations and whatnot are always very understanding. And you know, there's a lot of tension in some areas today, but believe me, we all have the same interest in mind when it comes to the public land and the ability to use it and to keep it nice. So, you know, we're all working for the same team there.
Yeah. And they handled it fast. We reported it an hour and 20 minutes later. I was on the phone with 2 different law enforcement agencies out here, and I wouldn't have believed how fast they got back to me. And it's the same in every state I've ever adventured in. When you got to call those people, call them. They will help
They
you.
come.
And they come. And I'm friends with a game warden, and he knows that I had my hip laparoscopic. Basically, it took everything out of my left hip. And he told me, he's like, you ever fall over, you struggle to get up, you can't get out of your tree stand, give me a call. He's like, I don't care if it's my day off, we will get someone out there to help you.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, I always hear people talk about, oh, Mr. Green Jeans ruined my day. No, sorry, I think you ruined your day long before by making
If you
those
weren't doing
choices.
something wrong, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah, it's weird. I never feel like I should be in trouble when a game warden shows up. But there are people out there, and we've all seen them on Facebook or Instagram talking smack about the DNR or the DWPs that are out there in every state. And I'm like, we know who the enemy is.
Yeah.
You just raised a giant red flag for everybody to see. And to that extent, if you think those people aren't watching what you post online, the game board I'm friends with is like, we catch more criminals posting pictures to Instagram than we do going out in the woods. So if you're gonna be stupid, be quiet. But as I've said in the other episodes, I don't know if you guys have heard this. Every time I talk about these issues with public land, I always joke about it in some way, shape, or form, and we've called it the Little Pecker Club. You don't want to be a part of the Little Pecker Club. You don't want to be a gatekeeper for public land. Don't destroy public land. Don't ruin it for us, right? And I think this stuff transcends everybody, because Little Pecker energy is around every man, woman that's out there. And we can tell when you meet somebody, right? And we've all met weird people who make public land worse, like Mr. Ruger #1. And I feel like we talk about that guy because I don't think he's still here. Rest his soul in peace. But we've all run into guys. Like last year we were out here, Dad, we ran into that one gentleman we called Mr. Brown Pants because we were watching him through the binoculars stomping around. And man, I thought I put miles on. This guy went like he couldn't sit still. And he's an interesting character. And that's part of the fun of it, is sometimes you meet people that you would never other have crossed paths with. And that makes it so much fun.
Yep.
Right? Like, I had a buddy who hiked the Appalachian Trail. And he said half the fun of it, aside from seeing all of the stuff out there, by the way, the Appalachian Trail, one of the longest sections of publicly owned property in the entire United States, goes from Georgia to Maine. Hike a section of it. Go see it. Meet some of those people. And yeah, there are scary stories out there on the internet. There's scary stories about everything. But it's the people you meet that make it so much fun at times. They're part of the stories that you tell. And we joke about, I think all of us have told stories about different random people we met this weekend.
Yeah.
Luckily, this has been the oddest opening week of deer season I've ever experienced out here in Kansas. We didn't run into but that one group that we talked about with the issues. We didn't run into anybody else hardly.
Yeah. When we came home tonight, there was not another car out there at any of the parking spots getting to that property.
First weekend of the season too, which is just bizarre. And it becomes alarming because if the land is not getting used, that gets recognized very quickly.
And when we got license checked, that's what the guy said. He said, this is the slowest open weekend I've ever seen.
So, like John mentioned about your parks and whatnot getting run down, part of getting run down is they don't get used. And it's the same thing with other types of public land. If it's not getting used, people take note of that, and pretty soon it's not public land anymore because somebody got the idea we can benefit from another mall or another housing development, or some private investor decides that they're going to own that land for their own, whatever they want to do.
If you've been following the hunting news, the Iron Gate fence crossing controversy is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
With checkerboarding in the western United States, where people have essentially landlocked parcels of private land, and because people weren't using them, the state sold off sections, and now there are sections that are owned, right? We'll put that in air quotations. I know y'all listening can't see it. Those of you on the YouTube can see the quotations we were putting around that. That's part of what makes those property values so expensive, and that's what the owner of the Iron Gate Ranch is suing the hunters who hopped the corner, and because of the court case where they lost, the Iron Gate lost enforcing trespassing against the hunters, they said you devalued by millions of dollars this ranch, and that's still in litigation right now for the suit against the 4 hunters from the state of Missouri. But it's wild to me that that's what happens when you don't use public land and the state wants to recoup funds and they sell off parcels, and then all of a sudden you got to be airborne qualified, like Chris, jumping out.
Hey, I've had both my hips replaced. I don't jump out of planes that often anymore. Although I did do it with my daughter for her 18th birthday, You can make exceptions.
But you almost got to jump out of planes to get to some of these places. And if you harvest something, I guess they're going to have to airlift you out because you can't get back.
In this particular
God,
situation,
that's scary.
All these recipes, and we're working on this stuff, and we decided we were in a trap shooting league and said, well, we'll try these things out when we're at night.
That's something I want to get on video.
And we get out there, and we got all these different loads with us, and we've got this. I don't know, the guy's probably 65 years old, and he's gonna lay next to me. And it's dark out at night, and I let the first one off, and there must have been a flame that came out of my barrel about 2 feet. And I was like, "Whoa, that one's kind of hot." And I looked over at him, and he's like, "I don't want to trade."
So, yeah, public land, getting outdoors is a great way to meet people. I know I've exposed my partner who grew up in the city to it, took her out on a boat for the first time, and watching her catch fish, white bass, hand over fish. She outfished the crap out of me. I took her out with my dad, and she outfished both of us.
yeah,
She couldn't keep a rod in the water. Meanwhile, we're looking at ours like, what's going on? But one thing that I wanted to thank my dad for is the introduction to the outdoors. And I got something for you, and hopefully the GoPro is going so I can get this. I got something that for the lifetime that you've given me for this, wanted to give you something that's going to last the hopefully long rest of your life. But I went out, and I'm a big knife person, and Dad, I wanted to give you this for all your work. It's a Winkler Knives Hunter series, and if you know anything about knives, you know that Winkler knives are some of the best knives ever made. So Dad,
absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, brother.
thank you so much for this, and thank you for helping arrange this the first year that we did it last year, and then this year I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this passion without you, and I'm happy that you're here.
Well, good. Yeah,
I love you, man. Thank you so much.
and
So-
I love you and all of us here. It's a fun group, and it's just you just have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Good.
That's our episode for today, y'all. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, I'll splice the video. Like and subscribe to our podcast on Podbean. We'll have more stories, more things coming up about public land and issues, because it's heading into politics season at the start of next year. And I know several states are debating their political issues for their DWPs and DNRs now. So if you're your first time listener, be active in those conversations. Do those things. Get outside. Go outdoors. Because as we said in our first episode, once your connection to nature is severed, your soul begins to fade. So don't let your soul burn away. Don't let it fade away. Go watch a sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Nick, don't poke me with that.
All right.
We'll see you all next time.
Take care, everybody. That's beautiful.
I know you were thinking it.
Oh, Winkler knives are awesome.
I've never heard of them. Now I need to look them up.
Enjoy
you
the
watched-
22-week wait time.
You watched that?
Because they make everyone buy
the Terminalist,
you just wipe
remember?
that off.
Yeah.
The tomahawks.
Oh
he
yeah,
had?
no,
Yes.
I
Those are Winklers.
He wanted to see her. Chris wanted
No
to-
kidding?
Yeah.
All this stuff I gotta learn.
Thanks, brother. You didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I did. All these memories.
That is
That puts those
substantial.
Montana knives to shame, though, in my opinion.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank God it's
I saw it the other night.
Oh, did you?
yeah, I
love
showed it
that
to him when
wood.
he went upstairs. And I was like, oh my God, my God.
Yeah, I always wanted to get the tribal on there because you can pick a couple of different designs, and the tribal I'm always like, yeah, I like it on there.
That's nice.
That wood is just, it's soft.
It
but
is.
It's rich feeling.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, give me that.
Oh.
Oh, the GoPro's still going. Yeah, why did it last?